It looks like we're starting to struggle to go higher, and that's why it's important that today we look at the technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia. And at the very end of this video, because one of you guys commented and you want me to cover it, I'm going to look at AMD. Okay, so once we get through the yields and VIX, I will go into AMD as well. So look out for that. Let's get into it. On here, I have updated those weekly ranges. I thought they were pretty thin, and so I wanted to make sure to upgrade those because I was expecting some volatility to come in this week, and I was like, man, that was a pretty thin range there. Okay, so as we do look at the SPY here with those weekly ranges updated, okay, we can notice that we are starting to try to pull higher, but you can see these candles are starting to show that we are seeing that momentum start to die out at this point. We can see that on the shorter time frames, and we're going to go into shorter time frames to show you guys what could be going on. But first, I just wanted to remind you guys of that possible head and shoulders setting up. I think that's a very likely scenario at this point. And you notice that if we do get some kind of hip fire move down to these levels, we could actually buy back into that zone by the end of the week. Okay, so I would really be paying attention to that, and that would look very good to get a healthier move going forward and get that bull run into the end of the year. I just wanted to cover if we do extend a little bit higher. Okay, so if this starts to extend higher and higher, maybe even go to our weekly range, right, we actually could see some kind of pullback in the future. We do have Jerome Powell talking a couple times this week, and maybe he's going to try to sound even more convincingly hawkish. Okay, so maybe it's going to take Jerome Powell talking or something like that. He does talk, I believe, Wednesday and Thursday. So if we do just trickle around in this area until then, I would maybe be expecting him to try to sound more hawkish and pull down this market a little bit, okay? But he hasn't done that yet, and if we do get that before he talks, maybe he's the one that actually is able to bring the market back. So we just want to pay attention to the actual things related to data and who's speaking as we go forward. And now let's look at shorter time frames. Okay, the main time frame I wanted to show you on the SPY was the 30-minute, because you're going to notice on the 30-minute that we have we've come out of these overbought conditions, right? And we could see some kind of little bull trap setup here with a divergence, okay? Because we have this very high reading in the RSI here, we actually could see this push a little bit higher and then start to break down. Now we want that to confirm and everything, but I just want to look out for that kind of divergence setting up for me. Overall, I don't know if that will happen. I really think that we're going to start to pull back to lower levels sooner rather than later. But, it's good to be open to all scenarios. The only thing is the Qs are coming up into the top of this, continuation flag we have on the daily. And I have updated these risk ranges. You notice that the risk range to the upside is pretty high up. And you notice this risk range here is lining up with this liquidity. Okay, so we could see this pull back down into this type of area. It's got some good liquidity in there. That means there's some buyers maybe lingering around there. We bounced from it before. When I do mention liquidity, I'm overall just stating this is where support is. And if you just look back, we can see, we bounced higher from this level, that could be support. We bounced higher from this level, that could be support, and it all lines up, right? So it all lines up. So that's why I'm paying attention to that area. And that would that would set up our left, our head, and our right shoulder. So that's what I'm going to pay attention to as of this week. And we haven't gotten any kind of breakdown, but overall, this is a strong move, and we need that to digest. And you can see a similar thing on the 30-minute for the Qs, okay? The only problem is the Qs are really close to that top of the flag. So I'm overall pretty convinced that we won't see too big of a divergence. You can still get some kind of divergence if we trickle a little bit higher and then start to pull back down. Maybe we wick down or something on the daily, and you can pay attention for that divergence, okay? But overall, the important thing we need to pay attention to here is if we do set up this right shoulder, get that higher low, we can start to see a more healthy move forward. And I believe that actually, if we do see this setup, we're going to see a prolonged, stronger move out of, beside what happened last week. I think we'll actually get a stronger move. It might just take more time. Okay, and Apple did get that, dink off back into the purple zone here, which we like to do before we head higher. Okay, I've discussed this a few times on this channel that to get out of this zone, we do like to, come out of it and then use it as support one more time to head higher. We're starting to see that happen, but it doesn't mean we can't, see some kind of pullback with the overall market. And the level that you're going to want to pay attention to is most likely this confluence in here, right? We bounced from this level right here. This level right in here, right around that price of probably about 172 is going to be where I'm expecting Apple to, gain some traction if we do see that pullback start to happen. If we start to extend higher from this level, maybe we don't get any bad news or something like that, and this isn't going to play out the way that I think it should, or will. Then if we do see an extended move over, look for that to, test the top of the Bollinger here, and then maybe pull back to get some kind of retest, right? And then we would dink the top of that purple zone. We discussed this in yesterday's video, and then we can see that even stronger move higher. Overall, the move that I'm expecting if we do head higher is something like this, right? We're going to go outside of that Bollinger Band, and then we're going to pull back down to lower levels to find buyers before heading higher. That could just be a very simple ABC pattern to the upside. But hold your horses on getting those calls to go to the upside, because we can notice here that we are starting to see some divergences pop up on these individual stocks, okay? And that's why I'm saying that I'm leaning towards that pullback as of this week, because we're starting to see that momentum start to die out on these shorter time frames, right? I do like the 30-minute. We can see that divergence between the two. It didn't confirm. It actually rolled back up, so it doesn't mean we can't make one more little high and then see this pull back down into this purple zone. And overall, you just want to be paying attention to this level right in here. I think right at that 172 will be a very, very good level to pay attention to. But pretty much what you want to pay attention to is like a 2 hour. Okay, so on a 2 hour, we can see we're in positive territory down here on the MACD. That's very important. And if we do roll over and then roll back up, you'll probably see this MACD maybe cross into negative territory for a moment. And then if you see it curl back up, that means that the trend is going to continue to be higher. Okay, so that's very important to pay attention to on Apple. Now, Tesla, I'm going to go right into an hourly, okay? I'm going to go right into an hourly on Tesla, because Tesla's actually doing, and I believe I actually said this in yesterday's video, Tesla looks like it actually is holding, it's starting to sell off at the price that it actually should, unlike the, certain markets or certain stocks are starting to head, past the levels where we could see head and shoulders form, right? So we just want to pay attention to that, okay? But Tesla looks pretty good at this point. We're seeing this level right in here start to act as resistance. We can get our left, our head, and our right shoulder. And this is overall why I'm leaning towards that pullback. Maybe Tesla's telling us something that the overall market is not at this point. And we can see this dip down, fill this gap right here, and then see that curl back up, okay? So if we pull up the 2 hour here, you can notice that we did barely get into positive territory. If we do see some kind of quick rollover, right, we can roll over and get back into positive territory. I believe we'll see a very explosive move in Tesla. Now on Amazon, you're noticing the difference on the 2 hour chart here is we actually did get that crossing on the MACD. Okay, so if you look down here, we're starting to see those red bars trickle up. We're in that overbought territory still as of today. That's going on for maybe 5 days at this point. We can stay overbought for quite some time. But that just tells me that this move is starting to die out to the upside. The buying has discontinued at this point, and we could see some kind of pullback to fill this gap or even this gap. And I am leaning towards this gap down in here. Okay, so I am leaning towards this just because it lines up with this liquidity in here. We use this level actually as support a few times back in here. Okay, so I believe that this pretty much this price point of about 128 actually probably more around 127.50 will be pretty important for Amazon. Now, if we do hold up higher, you're just going to look for this 2 hour to remain in that positive territory, okay? If this remains in positive territory and curls back up, you're most likely going to see that the trend will continue upward because we are in positive territory, and we can see, another leg higher maybe in Amazon. Now, it is a similar story across the board, for a lot of these stocks that we're kind of looking like we need to pull back to find some more buyers to move higher, because that buying is starting to look like it's dying out at these highs here. We're just going to look at the 2 hour here, and this is one stock that I was talking about, like how Tesla actually held up at the right areas, right? Right in here is probably where we wanted Nvidia to see that pullback to remain healthy. Now that just means that you might be getting a steeper pullback to go fill this gap, maybe even go down to deeper levels, maybe towards this like 412 before we head higher, and that's just because it lines up pretty well with these supports in here, okay? So when I do say liquidity, I'm talking about supports and resistances, just so you're aware of that. And we can see that we held up around 410, 412, 413. We held up around 410, 412, 413. And then once we are able to move above that level, we actually see that explosive move. So I believe that this will be an important point for Nvidia. And we can look for the same thing, right? We can look for this 2 hour to roll over and then roll back up and see if we are able to remain in positive territory to see this upward trend continue into the future. We're talking about a lot of head and shoulders across the board, right? We have this one right here on the actual 10-year yield, left head, and maybe we go carve out that right shoulder, okay? So we are seeing an upward move in these yields while the market is still trying to go higher. So we are going to pay attention and point out that difference as of right now with TLT and the overall market. It doesn't mean the market can't go a little bit higher while TLT still pulls back, and we'll point it out throughout the week. But right now you're noticing that we are seeing a reaction here. If we do get up and test this level right in here, I believe that's an important level to test right now. And then we can maybe see the market start to pull back in that area. And as I pull up TLT, you're just going to see that we just looked at the SPY, we just looked at the Qs, and the Qs had green bars, right? We had green bars up in here, but we're noticing that we're actually getting a downward move in the TLT. So this can be kind of a first signal that maybe, just maybe, the market has this a little bit wrong at this point, and TLT has it right. That happens a lot of the time, and we can notice that if we do look, there's still this kind of head and shoulders here that needs to set up on TLT. It'll line up with all this liquidity in here. It should look pretty good, okay? This would be a very, very healthy and logical move for the market. Doesn't mean it has to happen though, so be open to, if we do go higher, we'll show you other levels we can look for a pullback in the future. But right now you do have that, difference between TLT and the SPY, which is what we mentioned we would bring up this week if it happens. So that's pretty cool to see. The VIX has had pretty much kind of a nothing day, right? We had almost a nothing day, so it might take some data. It might take Jerome Powell shaking some people out of positions later this week. We want to pay attention to those kinds of things. And overall, what we want to pay attention to here is, another head and shoulders, okay? So we have a left, we have a head, and we have a right shoulder going to maybe form. And this might even get us all the way above 20, right? We could really scare some people out if volatility gets above 20. So maybe that's what the market wants to do, because these market makers were not expecting that explosive move last week. They need to reposition, so they might want to pull this market down and then flip to the long side. We'll have to see. But right now, I just want to be aware of this. And right now you can see that if we do get that right shoulder, I believe it will set up some kind of, lower high at that point, right? We're going to get that lower high, which will most likely not be able to curl over this MACD, and then we'll see that continue to head into negative territory later on in this week or next week. The VIX is a good point to point out, like if we are overall not going to see a right shoulder, we're going to see deeper levels, and maybe we do get some kind of crash. And I like to bring this up just to refresh you, because I don't want anyone, it's important not to get too bullish or too bearish. You want to be able to flip and react based on what the market's doing. And if we do see that crash scenario, I'm going to just say it one more time. Okay, if the 50 crosses that 200, we might have to rethink everything we're talking about, but that hasn't happened at this point. We're closing below the 200 and the 50. Those haven't crossed yet, but we want to be open to it just in case. At this point, the most likely scenario looks like we are going to go set up some kind of higher or lower high in this area. Okay, AMD here. Okay, AMD is pretty cool because I don't pay attention to it a lot, but you can see how I kind of found some levels for you that I really liked. And let's just see if, using the stuff that we talk about, if you could have seen some kind of bounce coming. And overall, we pay attention to a lot of divergences, right? And we can see bounces off those divergences. Right here, you came out of that Bollinger Band, you see that reaction, okay, off the 200. We actually cut the 200 and we get new lows coming below that Bollinger Band one more time. But we notice here that people can get very fearful. You're below the 200, but we actually see we have divergence at this on a daily chart. So you can see right here, we actually crossed. If you would have bought this, you could see a little bit of an up move here. And then my overall thinking with this is kind of similar to a lot of the stuff we're paying attention to. And real quick, just look down below. You can see those divergences. Okay, I already marked them for you, so you don't get to see my terrible drawings, right? But from this level, I'm really thinking we could see some kind of pullback into this little zone here. I think this zone is pretty important for this stock at this point, right? So I believe we could pull all the way back, maybe even down to a price of about 99 or 100 before we set up this right shoulder. And you can see this here with the left, the head, and the right shoulder. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see with all my indicators up right now, but you can kind of see right here, right, left, head, and maybe we set up some kind of right shoulder in order to move higher at this point on AMD. We did have a wedge, so you can calculate out like a good expected move, okay, into the future. And overall, the expected move for this actually is somewhere up towards these highs, but I don't like to play these highs, right? I like to find a point where I think those sellers could step in. And overall, you could just mark this off and say, hey, anywhere up in this area to this area, those sellers could step back in. So starting at that 116.81, you can see that price point there hold as resistance. But it looks like that we could get some kind of explosive move if we start to head higher. And the only one I didn't really mark out, I believe, was this right here. So we can actually just draw this up real quick and see if we could see a higher move. And you'll notice we come above this level, but I really like this level of 127.33 for a price target for AMD. Last thing I want to say about AMD, that's a very high price point. Okay, these price points can take a lot of time to get to, and that's why if you are using price like expected moves or something like that, as far as these structures of wedges and things, I would really treat this as an investor. It's a little bit hard to use these kind of expected moves, these expected breakouts as price targets for options. So I just wanted to mention that. Right now it looks like we're going to pull back, so overall I would treat this as an investment in order to get to that 127.33. But if you know what you're doing, tackle it the way you know how to tackle it. Sorry it's so dark in here. It's got randomly really dark. As it gets colder, it gets dark. Okay, so the main takeaway for this video is it looks like we are starting to struggle at the levels where we're struggling, and I told you that we could see some wonky price action in the meantime until something happens to bring us down, something happens to pull us back. Overall, I believe that this is going to be just a pullback in order to head higher at this point. But that doesn't mean we can't be open to all scenarios. It's just something that looks like the most probable thing at this point based on the technicals. Thank you guys for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. You guys are liking, subscribing, and all that stuff. And you're even commenting stocks for me to look at. And I really appreciate that because I do enjoy looking at stocks that I don't normally look at. So make sure to put those in the comments. Make sure to pay attention to everything that's coming out this week. Jerome Powell's talking. But overall, make sure to have some good luck trading tomorrow, okay? Have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow, but have a good night. Peace.